The massive war room stretched for miles beneath the surface of Nexus Prime. Carved from a single crystal that had grown for millions of years, the walls pulsed with a soft blue light, responding to the emotional tension of the beings gathered. Within, representatives from across the galaxy sat in floating pods, their various forms requiring different atmospheric conditions to survive. Elder Vorthok was the oldest being in the chamber. His species, the Kethma, had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations when most other races were still crawling in primordial oceans. His ancient body floated in a tank of luminescent fluid. 6 compound eyes rotating independently to observe the heated debate surrounding him. Scars from countless battles marked his translucent skin, each one a story of survival from the galaxy's darkest days. The discussion had been raging for hours. The hegemony fleet, the galaxy's dominant military force, wanted to expand their territory into the Outer Rim systems. These were the Forgotten Zones, spaces marked as dead on all star charts, supposedly empty of intelligent life. You young fools understand nothing. Vorthok's voice wheezed through the translation matrix, each word carrying the weight of eons. The Outer Rim is not empty. It never was. They're still there. Watching, waiting. Commander Briggs slammed his armored fist against his pod's control panel, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. The hegemony officer was a Turkic, his species that had evolved from metallic-based life forms. His body was a fusion of organic tissue and living metal, creating a natural exoskeleton that could withstand the vacuum of space. Red optical sensors glowed where eyes might have been on other species. Enough of your ghost stories, Ancient One. Brix's voice carried the mechanical undertone of his species' vocal modifications. My fleets have mapped every system within 2,000 light years. We've found ruins, dead worlds, empty space, but no sleeping giants. No mythical warriors, just opportunity waiting to be claimed. The holographic display in the center of the chamber shimmered to life, showing grainy footage that made the assembled representatives lean forward in their pods. The images were ancient, corrupted by time and multiple transfers between incompatible data formats. They showed ships unlike anything in the current galactic registry. Vessels that seemed to flow through space like liquid metal, changing shape as they moved. The weapons they deployed defied physics as the current civilizations understood it. Behold, Vorthok continued, his voice growing stronger as the memories stirred within him. The humans, the species that once held dominion over half the galaxy. Ships that could reshape themselves for any battle. Weapons that could unravel the very fabric of space itself. They conquered not through cruelty, but through power so absolute that resistance was meaningless. Ambassador Zelenar of the crystalline hegemony shifted nervously in her pod. Her species was made of living crystal, and her form sparkled with refracted light as she spoke. But elder, these records are 3,000 years old. Even if this species existed, surely they would have contacted us by now. The galaxy has been at peace for centuries. Peace? Vorthok laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You call the endless border wars and territorial disputes peace. The humans left because they realized something the rest of us refused to acknowledge. That true peace can only exist when one power is so strong that no one dares challenge it. They chose exile over the responsibility of being that power. Meanwhile, at the very edge of the Kefla system, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, the human vessel Perseverance drifted silently through space. To any casual observer, she looked like exactly what she claimed to be, an aging exploration ship from a minor civilization, her hull scarred by centuries of peaceful scientific missions. Her energy signature was deliberately kept low, her weapons hidden behind false panels that had been perfected over millennia of deception. Captain Park Hyanwu sat in the command chair, his dark eyes focused on the transmission from the Galactic Council. At 57, He was considered young by human standards, but his face carried the weight of responsibility that came with commanding one of Earth's deepest reconnaissance missions. His black hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his hands showed the calluses of someone who had learned to repair his own ship in the depths of space. Beside him, Lieutenant Kim Soo-min monitored the communication rays with practiced efficiency. At 32, she was one of Earth's finest tactical officers, though her gentle features and quiet demeanor made her appear more like a university professor than a warrior. Her slim fingers danced across holographic controls as she filtered through hundreds of alien languages, her cybernetic implants translating faster than any organic mind could process. "Captain," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the ship's ambient hum. "They're debating whether we even exist. The hegemony wants to expand into the buffer zones we established round Sol System," Hein Wu's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrests of his chair. For 3,000 years, humanity had maintained a perfect masquerade. They had withdrawn from galactic politics, destroyed their own star charts, and allowed themselves to fade into legend. It had been the hardest decision in human history. To give up their empire in the name of peace, the bridge around them was a study in controlled technology, and like the flashy displays favored by other species, human interfaces were designed for efficiency during combat. Holographic projection showed only essential data, and every control could be operated by touch, thought, or voice command. The walls themselves were embedded with quantum processors that could calculate stellar navigation or weapon trajectories with equal precision. "Sir," Lieutenant Lee Jin-ho called from the weapons station. The young officer was barely 25, one of the new generation of humans born in exile. His dark eyes held a mixture of curiosity and concern as he monitored the alien transmissions. "The hegemony fleet is already positioning for expansion. They're treating the Sol approach routes as undefended territory." Back in the council chamber, the debate was reaching its climax. Commander Brix had activated a tactical display showing hegemony fleet positions, red markers indicating the positions of over 300 warships spread across a dozen systems. "We have the largest fleet in galactic history," Brix declared, his metallic voice filled with pride. "Our ships can crack planets. Our weapons can sterilize entire systems. If these humans were real, if they were as powerful as your myths claim, why haven't they stopped us already?" Elder Vorthic's 6 eyes focused on the hegemony commander with an intensity that made several nearby representatives shift uncomfortably in their pods. "Because, young fool, they hoped we would learn wisdom in their absence. They gave us 3,000 years to prove we could govern ourselves without their oversight. And what have we done with that gift?" The ancient being gestured toward the tactical display, where the red markers of the hegemony fleet formed an aggressive pattern round neutral systems. "Border wars, resource conflicts, the strong preying upon the weak. We have learned nothing." Captain Hein Wu muted the transmission and turned to his crew. The bridge held 12 officers, each one handpicked from Earth's finest military academies. They were the children and grandchildren of the last generation to remember galactic civilization, raised on stories of humanity's golden age and trained for the day when isolation might no longer be possible. "Opinions?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun, the ship's executive officer and the captain's younger brother, spoke first. His resemblance to the captain was unmistakable, but where Hein Wu carried himself with careful control, Min-jun had the eager intensity of someone who had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "They've forgotten why we left," he said. "The hegemony is making the same mistakes that led to the galactic wars. Someone needs to remind them that power without wisdom leads to destruction. And if that someone is us," Hein Wu asked, "are we prepared to abandon 3,000 years Of peaceful isolation, the question hung in the air like a physical weight. Every person on the bridge understood what was at stake. Humanity had chosen exile over empire, peace over power. But that choice had only been possible because the galaxy had remembered to fear them now. With that fear faded to legend. The delicate balance was collapsing. Su-Min looked up from her console, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was suggesting. "Sir, Earth Command gave us standing orders. If the isolation protocols fail, if the galaxy forgets why we left, we are authorized to remind them, in the depths of space, round them." Ancient beacons began to pulse with signals that had not been transmitted for 3 millennia. Across the Outer Rim, similar ships to the Perseverance received the activation codes and began to awaken systems that had slept for generations. Humanity was stirring from its self-imposed exile. And the galaxy was about to remember why they had once ruled the stars through strength alone. The Age of Legends was ending. The Age of Reckoning was about to begin. The hyperspace exit was violent. Reality tearing open like fabric as the Perseverance dropped back into normal space. The ship shuddered as exotic energies dissipated round her hull, leaving her floating in the cold darkness at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Heinwu gripped his command chair as the artificial gravity stabilized. Watching through the main view screen as stars snapped back into their proper positions. The Perseverance was a masterpiece of deception. Her outer hull was scarred and patched, showing the wear of centuries spent traveling between distant stars. Radiation burns from passing too close to unstable suns marked her flanks. While asteroid impacts had left craters that spoke of dangerous journeys through debris fields, to any scanning equipment, she appeared to be exactly what she claimed, an ancient exploration vessel held together by determination and spare parts. Lieutenant Kim Suman's fingers danced across her sensor console, her cybernetic implants, processing data faster than any organic mind could comprehend. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The hegemony fleet is already here." The tactical display came alive with hostile contexts. Red markers filled the space around them, each one representing a hegemony warship larger than anything humanity had fielded during their Empire days. The ships were brutal in their design, all angles and armor plating, built for intimidation as much as warfare. Weapon ports bristled along their hulls like the spines of some terrible space-borne predator. 117 vessels, reported Lieutenant Li Jinho from the weapons station. The young officer's voice remained steady despite the overwhelming odds they faced. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, and carrier groups. They've got us surrounded. Captain Heinwu studied the formation with the eye of someone who had spent decades analyzing alien military tactics. The hegemony had positioned their ships in a perfect sphere around the Perseverance every angle of escape covered by overlapping fields of fire. It was textbook military doctrine, overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. The communication ray crackled to life, filled with the harsh metallic voice of Commander Briggs. The hegemony officer's words carried the weight of absolute authority, the tone of someone who had never been challenged in battle. "Unknown vessel, you have violated hegemony space without authorization. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." Heinwu activated the ship's universal translator, a device that had taken humanity centuries to perfect. His response was broadcast simultaneously in 17 different languages, from the clicking consonants of the insectoid thrycrene to the harmonic tones of the energy-based luminary. "This is Captain Park Heinwu of the Terran Confederation. Vessel Perseverance *. We are on a peaceful diplomatic mission and request safe passage to establish formal contact with your government. We pose no threat to your forces." The bridge fell completely silent. Every member of the crew understood the magnitude of this moment. For 3,000 years, humanity had hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, allowing themselves to become legend and myth. Now, for the first time in millennia, they were announcing their presence to the wider galactic community. Commander Brix's laughter echoed through the communication channel, a sound like grinding metal that spoke of contempt and barely contained violence. His massive form dominated the main screen as the visual connection activated, revealing the cybernetic nightmare that the Turgic had become. Half his face was replaced with optical sensors, while his left arm had been entirely replaced with a weapon system that integrated directly into his nervous system. Terran, Brix sneered, his red optical sensors focusing on the human captain with predatory intensity. "I've never heard of your pathetic species. Your ship looks like it belongs in a scrapyard, and your energy readings are so weak my sensors can barely detect you. What makes you think you have the right to demand anything from the hegemony?" Lieutenant Commander Park Minchun, serving as the ship's executive officer, leaned forward in his chair. "Sir, they're powering up weapons. All ships are targeting. US, the tactical display showed targeting lasers converging on the Perseverance from every direction. Each hegemony vessel carried enough firepower to level continents, and they were all focused on the tiny human ship that had dared to enter their space uninvited." Ironwu opened the channel once more, his voice carrying a subtle edge that his crew recognized as a warning. "Commander Brix, I strongly advise you to reconsider your current course of action. This vessel is equipped with defensive systems that your weapons cannot penetrate. Stand down your forces, and we can discuss this situation like civilized beings." The hegemony commander's response was immediate and violent. "Civilized? You dare lecture the hegemony about civilization? Your rust bucket of a ship couldn't survive a collision with space debris, let alone our weapons. All ships prepared to fire." On the bridge of the Perseverance Lieutenant Legion Ho's console began flushing with targeting alerts. "Captain, we've got firing solutions on us. Multiple weapon types, plasma cannons, particle beams, kinetic accelerators, whatever they're planning to hit us with. It's enough to crack a moon in half." Suman's voice carried a note of concern as she monitored the hegemony fleet's communications. "Sir, they're coordinating a simultaneous strike. Every ship in their formation is locked onto our position." Hanwu closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the peaceful years humanity had enjoyed in exile. Earth's gardens, the orbital cities round Jupiter, the research stations in the outer system, all of it threatened by the galaxy's inability to learn from its own history. When he opened his eyes again, they held a hardness that spoke of difficult decisions made long ago. "Commander Brix," he said, his voice carrying across the void with finality, "you are about to fire upon a diplomatic vessel. This will be considered an act of war by the Terran Confederation. I'm giving you one final opportunity to stand down." Brix's metallic laughter filled the communication channel. "War. You think your pathetic excuse for a civilization could threaten us? We are the masters of this galaxy. We have conquered 100 worlds and crushed a dozen species. Your threats mean nothing." The hegemony commander's voice rose to a roar of mechanical fury. "All ships, open fire. Show these primitives what happens when they challenge the might of the hegemony. Reduce that scrap heap to atoms." 117 warships fired simultaneously. The space round the Perseverance erupted in a symphony of destruction as every weapon in the hegemony arsenal discharged at once, plasma bolts that burned at the temperature of stellar cores streaked through the void. Particle beams that could punch through planetary crust lanced out from dozens of ships. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, created trails of superheated particles as they converged on their target. The human vessel disappeared completely, engulfed in a sphere of pure energy that outshone the system's star. For 30 seconds, The inferno raged, fed by enough destructive force to sterilize an entire world. The hegemony fleet held their fire, watching as the explosion gradually faded, revealing nothing but empty space where their target had been. Commander Briggs nodded with satisfaction, his optical sensors recording the destruction for his superiors. Target eliminated. Another primitive species learns the price of. His words died in his mechanical throat as the Perseverance emerged from the dissipating energy cloud, her hull completely unmarked by the devastating assault. Not a single scorch mark marred her surface, not a single system showed damage. She floated in space as calmly as if she had just weathered a mild solar storm instead of the concentrated firepower of her. An entire fleet. Captain Heinwu's voice cut through the stunned silence that had fallen over the hegemony fleet. When he spoke, his tone had changed completely, carrying an authority that seemed to bend reality round it. Commander Briggs, you have fired upon a diplomatic vessel operating under the protection of interstellar law. This is an act of war against the Terran Confederation. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we respond in kind. Deep within the Perseverance systems that had slept for 3,000 years began to stir. Ancient weapons designed by minds that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe awakened from their long dormancy. The age of human restraint was ending, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had once feared the children of Earth above all other species in the cosmos. The transformation began with a sound that no one on the bridge had ever heard before, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the very bones of the ship itself. The walls of the Perseverance began to glow with soft blue light as quantum processors that had been dormant for millennia suddenly roared to life. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. Lieutenant Kim Soo-min gasped as her simple console dissolved before her eyes, replaced by a three-dimensional holographic interface that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. Streams of data flowed through the air like living things, showing her information about every ship in the hegemony fleet down to their individual crew members. She could see their weapon systems, their shield frequencies, even the psychological profiles of their commanding officers. "This is impossible," she whispered, her hands moving through displays that seemed to anticipate her every need. The processing power required for this level of analysis, it's like the ship is reading their minds. The deck beneath their feet shifted and expanded as hidden compartments opened throughout the vessel. What had appeared to be storage areas revealed themselves as weapon bays containing technology that defied every law of physics the galaxy thought it understood. The ship's hull began to flow like liquid mercury, restructuring itself from the peaceful exploration vessel they had known into something that belonged in humanity's darkest military archives. Captain Heinwu watched the transformation with mixed emotions. He had served on exploration ships his entire career, vessels dedicated to peaceful scientific research and cultural exchange. But every human captain was also trained for this moment, the day when 3,000 years of voluntary exile would end and they would be forced to reveal what they had truly become. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun from his position near the tactical center. "The primary weapon systems are coming online. I'm reading power levels that shouldn't be possible. These aren't the weapons we trained within the simulators." Heinwu nodded grimly. "The training systems were deliberately limited. We couldn't risk anyone discovering our true capabilities, even our own people. What you're seeing now is what humanity became during our isolation. What we had to become to ensure we would never again threaten the galaxy through weakness." Lieutenant Lee Jin-ho stared at his weapons console in amazement as systems he had never seen before materialized round him. His training had prepared him for the standard armaments carried by human exploration vessels, basic defensive systems, and non-lethal subdual weapons. What he saw now belonged in the realm of theoretical physics textbooks, Sir, I'm reading quantum disruptor rays, reality anchor projectors, and something called gravitational field manipulation systems. The computer says these weapons can affect the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The young officer's voice carried a mixture of excitement and terror. Captain, according to these readings, we could destroy that entire fleet without firing a single conventional shot. These weapons don't just destroy matter, they can make it so targets never existed in the first place. Throughout the ship, similar transformations were taking place. The medical bay revealed hidden compartments containing technology that could heal wounds by reversing time round the injury. The engineering sections expanded to accommodate fabrication systems that could create complex materials by manipulating atomic structures at the quantum level. Even the crew quarters had hidden spaces containing equipment whose purpose remained mysterious to all but the highest-ranking officers. Commander Brix stared at his tactical display in growing horror as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were detecting. The human ship had grown to 3 times its original size, but somehow it was also reading as smaller and larger simultaneously. His instruments were detecting energy signatures that registered as both present and absent. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Science officers of. He barked at the crystalline being manning his sensor station. What are your readings on that vessel? Zerth's crystalline form sparkled with colors that indicated extreme stress among his species. His harmonic voice carried notes of confusion and fear. Commander, our sensors are detecting impossible readings. The ship is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. But it's also showing 0 energy output. It's as if it exists in multiple realities simultaneously. The crystalline officer's form began to dim as he processed more data. Sir, I'm detecting weapons that shouldn't be possible. They're not just targeting our ships. They're targeting the very concepts of our ships. It's as if they could make us not just destroyed, but never having existed at all on the bridge of the Perseverance *. Captain Heinwu stood and walked to the center of the command area. The ship's artificial intelligence, awakened for the first time in 3 millennia, projected a holographic interface around him that responded to his every gesture with a wave of his hand. He opened communication channels to every ship in the hegemony fleet simultaneously, bypassing their encryption and security systems as if they were children's toys. I am Captain Park Hyenwu of the Terra Navy. His voice echoed through every speaker on every ship in the enemy fleet. You have fired upon a diplomatic vessel operating under the protection of interstellar law. You have attacked non-combatants attempting peaceful contact. By the laws of war established by the Galactic Accords of 2157, you have forfeited your right to quarter warm mercy. The space round the Perseverance began to distort visibly as the ship's weapons charged to full power. Stars seemed to bend round the vessel as its gravitational field generators created localized distortions in space-time. The very fabric of reality rippled like water as systems that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe prepared for combat. Lieutenant Sumin watched her displays with growing amazement as the ship's sensors revealed details about the hegemony fleet that their own crews didn't know. Sir, I can see inside their ships. I know the names of their crew members, their personal histories, even their psychological weaknesses. How is this possible? Quantum entanglement sensors. Hyenwu replied calmly. Every atom in the universe is connected at the quantum level. Our sensors can read those connections and extrapolate complete information about any target. It's how we ensured that no threat could ever surprise us again. The captain's voice carried across the void once more, reaching every being in the hegemony fleet with words that would be remembered for generations. What you are about to witness is why the galaxy once feared the name human. We did not leave because we were defeated. We left because we realized we had become too dangerous to remain among the stars. You have forced us to remember why. Commander Brix tried desperately to coordinate his fleet's response, but his communication systems were being systematically overridden by the human ship or vessels. Concentrate fire on that monstrosity. Use everything we have. But even as he gave the order, he could see his ship's weapons powering down as the human vessel's influence spread through their systems. It wasn't jamming their equipment. It was rewriting the fundamental programming of their technology, turning their own ships against them on the bridge of the Perseverance *. Lieutenant Li Jinho looked up from his console with an expression of controlled terror. "Sir, all weapon systems are fully charged and ready. I have targeting solutions on every enemy vessel. The quantum disruptors alone could eliminate their entire fleet in seconds." Captain Hyanwu closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the peaceful gardens of Earth, the children playing in the orbital habitats round Jupiter, the scientists pursuing knowledge for its own sake in the research stations of the outer system. All of that would be threatened if the galaxy forgot why humanity had chosen exile over conquest. When he opened his eyes, they held the hardness of someone who had been forced to make the most difficult decision of his life. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of 3,000 years of isolation and the accumulated power of humanity's greatest military achievement, fire. The quantum disruptor ray fired first, though fired wasn't really the right word for what happened. There was no visible beam, no energy discharge that the eye could follow. Instead, reality itself seemed to hiccup round 17 hegemony vessels scattered throughout the fleet foe. Amation, one moment they were there, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons and armor plating thick enough to withstand planetary bombardment. The next moment, they simply weren't. Lieutenant Li Jinho watched his targeting display with a mixture of fascination and horror as the quantum disruptors did their work. "Sir, the weapons aren't destroying the ships," he reported, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "They're making them at the subatomic level. The quantum fields are literally convincing their atoms that they never bonded together in the first place." Captain Hyanwu nodded grimly. He had studied these weapons in the classified archives on Earth, but seeing them in action was something else entirely. The quantum disruptors didn't just kill, they erased, removing their targets from existence so completely that even the light they had reflected ceased to exist to any observer. It would appear as if those 17 ships had never been built, never launched, never carried their crews into battle. Commander Brix's tactical display showed the impossible. 17 of his most powerful warships simply vanishing from his screens without any indication of what had happened to them. His communications officer, a delicate crystalline being named Shyla, suddenly screamed and shattered into 1,000 glittering fragments as her telepathic abilities picked up the psychic echoes of her reality being rewritten. "What's happening?" Brix roared, his mechanical voice distorted by panic. "Where are my ships? Report." But his crew couldn't answer because they were trying to process something their minds weren't equipped to handle. The hegemony had conquered dozens of species, faced weapons that could crack planets and enemies that fought with the fury of dying civilizations. But they had never encountered anything that could simply delete matter from existence. The gravitational field generators activated next, and this time the effect was visible to the naked eye. Space itself began to twist round 30 more hegemony vessels as the Perseverance projected localized gravity wells that defied every law of physics the galaxy understood. Stars in the background seemed to bend and stretch as the fabric of space-time warped round the targeted ships. The effect on the hegemony vessels was immediate and horrifying. The massive dreadnoughts, each one larger than a city block and armored with materials that could withstand direct hits from stellar phenomena, began to crumple like empty food containers. The artificial gravity fields didn't just pull on the ships, they pulled differently on every atom, creating tidal forces that no material could resist. Captain Yaxstar of the hegemony battlecruiser *Subjugator* had just enough time to broadcast a final message before his ship folded in on itself, like origami made of metal, and screaming crew members. Command. The human ship is manipulating gravity itself. They're crushing us with invisible. His transmission cut off as the *Subjugator* compressed into a sphere no larger than a shuttle. Its million-ton mass condensed into a dense ball of exotic matter that would puzzle alien physicists for generations to come. Round the battle zone, 29 other ships suffered the same fate, their proud hulls reduced to perfect spheres of compressed matter that drifted through space like grotesque monuments to humanity's power. Lieutenant Kim Soo-min monitored the tactical display with professional calm, though her hands trembled slightly as she watched entire crews die in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Gravitational compression complete, sir. 47 enemy vessels eliminated. They're trying to scatter, but we still have them locked in our targeting matrix. Commander Brix's flagship Dominion tried desperately to escape, her massive engines flaring to life as her crew attempted to flee the nightmare they had stumbled into. But the ship barely moved before invisible forces locked her in place, holding her as motionless as if she had been embedded in solid rock. Emergency power 2. Engines, Brix screamed at his surviving crew. Maximum acceleration. Get us out of here. But his chief engineer, the six-armed hegemony officer whose species had evolved for technical work, could only stare at his displays in bewilderment. Sir, the engines are at full power. But something is holding us in place. It's like space itself has solidified around our ship. The reality anchors fired third, and this was perhaps the most terrifying weapon in humanity's arsenal. These weren't projectiles in any conventional sense. They were concentrated packets of alternative physics, bullets that existed in a state where the normal rules of the universe didn't apply. They ignored shields because in their localized reality, shields had never been invented. They passed through armor because they came from a dimension where armor was made of paper. 50 more hegemony ships died as the reality anchors struck their targets. The weapons didn't explode on impact. Instead, they convinced the ship's cores that implosion was the natural state of matter. Nuclear reactors that had powered these vessels for decades suddenly decided that their fuel was actually a antimatter. Life support systems that had kept crews alive for years abruptly concluded that oxygen was a poisonous gas. Lieutenant Commander Park Min-jun watched the carnage unfold on his displays with the detached professionalism of someone trained for this moment his entire life. Reality anchors have found their targets. Sir, enemy vessels are experiencing cascading system failures as local physics is rewritten round them. The destruction was mathematically precise. Each targeted ship imploded at exactly the same rate, their hulls folding inward in perfect geometric patterns as the reality anchors convinced their matter that this was the most natural thing in the universe. There were no explosions, no dramatic flashes of light, just the quiet, inexorable collapse of matter obeying laws that existed only in the localized space realm. Each weapon's impact point dot in 30 seconds. 97 ships, and their crews had ceased to exist. The pride of the hegemony fleet, vessels that had conquered star systems and reduced entire species to slavery, had been eliminated with clinical efficiency. The survivors hung in space like frightened animals, their crews broadcasting surrender signals in every language they know. Captain Heinwu studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who had spent decades planning for this moment. 20 ships remained out of the original 117, and most of them were already jumping to hyperspace as their crews fled in blind panic. Only Commander Brix's flagship remained. Held in place by the * Perseverance * Stractor systems, sir, Lieutenant Sumin reported, her voice steady despite what she had just witnessed. Multiple kills confirmed. Enemy fleet strength reduced by 83%. Remaining vessels are attempting to flee. Shall the first target the survivors, Haimu? Considered the question carefully. The logical military response would be to eliminate all witnesses, to ensure that news of humanity's capabilities didn't spread throughout the galaxy. But logic wasn't always the best policy when dealing with alien psychology. Negative, he decided. Let them run. Fear spreads faster than facts, and we want the galaxy to know what happens when they threaten humanity. But keep the flagship locked in place. Commander Brix and I need to have a conversation. He opened a communication channel to the crippled hegemony vessel, his voice carrying across the void with the authority of someone who had just demonstrated the power to rewrite reality itself. Commander Brix, this is Captain Park. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your ships are gone. Your crews are dead. Do you understand why this happened? The response came back broken, filled with a horror that would haunt the alien commander for the rest of his life. Brix's mechanical voice had lost all its earlier arrogance, replaced by the terrified whimper of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back. You're monsters, he whispered. How did you do this? Those weapons, they don't just kill, they'll make. You're rewriting the laws of physics themselves. Captain Haianwu's response was quiet, carrying a sadness that spoke of difficult choices made long ago. We are not monsters, Commander. We are humans, and you forgot that once upon a time, the galaxy was ours. We gave it up because we realized we were too dangerous to be allowed among the stars. But you came looking for us. You fired on a diplomatic vessel. You forced our hand. The bridge of the * Perseverance * was silent except for the gentle hum of cooling weapon systems. Lieutenant Li Jinho looked up from his console, his young face pale with the realization of what they had just done. Sir, Earth Command is requesting a full report on the engagement. Haianwu nodded slowly, his expression heavy with the weight of history. Tell them the isolation protocols have failed completely. Tell them the galaxy has forgotten why we chose exile over empire. Tell them that after 3,000 years of peace, humanity is coming home. In the distance, the surviving hegemony ships completed their jumps to hyperspace, carrying with them news that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of power, fear, and the sleeping giants who had once ruled the stars through strength alone. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Within 6 hours of the first survival reports reaching Nexus Prime, representatives from over 1,000 worlds had gathered in the great crystalline chamber that had hosted diplomatic meetings from the Linear. The massive space buzzed with nervous energy as beings who had never known true fear struggled to process what they had witnessed. The holographic displays showed the same footage over and over, grainy recordings from the few hegemony ships that had escaped the massacre at Kefla. Each viewing brought fresh gasps of disbelief from representatives who had built their entire understanding of warfare around conventional physics. Ships didn't just vanish into nothingness. Gravity wells couldn't be weaponized to crush dreadnoughts like tin cans. Reality itself wasn't supposed to be malleable. Ambassador Thixel of the Centauri Collective stood on her floating platform, her insectoid form clicking with agitation as she addressed the assembly. Her species had evolved from hive-minded creatures, giving her access to the collective memories of billions of individuals. Yet none of that vast experience had prepared her for what she was seeing. This footage must be fabricated, she insisted, her translator struggling with the rapid clicks and whistles of her native language. No single vessel could possess such power. The energy requirements alone would require the output of multiple stars. It's simply impossible. But even as she spoke, more reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations were detecting massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace, not the chaotic readings of conventional ships, but perfectly controlled distortions that suggested technology far beyond anything the current galactic civilizations possessed. Eldervorthic had remained silent through hours of debate, his ancient form floating in its life support pod, while his 6 eyes independently tracked the various speak. Rupees, the Kethmer Elder was older than most civilizations, having witnessed the rise and fall of entire species. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the chamber like the whisper of cosmic winds. "You forget your history," he said, each word weighted with the authority of someone who had lived through the events others only read about in archives. 3,000 years ago, humanity ruled half this galaxy. Not through conquest or subjugation, but through power so absolute that resistance was meaningless. I watched entire Armada's surrender without firing a shot rather than face even a single human vessel. The chamber fell silent as Vorthic's words sank in. Most of the assembled representatives belonged to species that had evolved to sentience, long after humanity's voluntary exile. To them, humans were legends, myths created to explain ancient ruins and mysterious technologies found on dead worlds. They didn't leave because they were defeated. The Elder continued, his voice growing stronger as ancient memories stirred within him. They left because they realized what they had become. They chose exile over the responsibility of being the galaxy's ultimate arbiters. They gave us 3,000 years to prove we could govern ourselves without their oversight. The holographic display shifted, showing Captain Heinwu's final transmission. The human captain's image appeared larger than life in the center of the chamber, his calm features belying the power he had just demonstrated. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of prophecy, each sentence striking the assembled representatives like a physical blow. To all civilizations receiving this message, humanity has returned to the galaxy. We spent 3,000 years in exile, hoping that our absence would bring peace to the stars. We see now that we were wrong. The galaxy has not learned wisdom in our absence. It has forgotten fear. Representative Zeklin of the machine collective known as the Synthesis shuddered as his quantum processors tried to calculate the implications of what they were hearing. His kind had been created by an extinct organic species to carry on their legacy. But even their advanced artificial intelligence couldn't comprehend technology that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. Impossible. He broadcast through his speakers, his electronic voice carrying harmonics of confusion and terror. Our calculations show that the weapons demonstrated would require manipulation of forces that exist only in theoretical realm. Odals, no civilization could develop such technology. The human captain continued his message, seemingly addressing each member of the council directly. We came in peace. We offered friendship. You responded with violence. This is the consequence of that choice. We are no longer the species that fled the galaxy in shame. We are what we became in isolation. Something far more dangerous than what we were before, as if summoned by his words. Deep space sensors throughout the galaxy began registering new contacts. These weren't the disguised exploration vessels like the Perseverance but true warships that made no attempt to hide their purpose. They moved through space like living creatures, their hulls shifting and adapting as they traveled. Energy readings from these vessels made the Perseverance look like a child's toy by comparison. The human ships didn't travel in formation like conventional fleets. Instead, they seemed to phase in and out of normal space, appearing at strategic points throughout the galaxy with precision that suggested they had been planning these movements for centuries. Some materialized near major trade routes, Others took positions round critical resource systems, and a few appeared in the heart of various species' home territories. Captain Hyanwoo's image seemed to look directly at each representative as he delivered his final words. "We are humanity. We are the children of Earth. We are the ones you forgot to fear. Learn from the hegemony's mistake. We are not your enemies unless you make us so. But if you choose war, remember this day. Remember what happened to those who thought we were myths." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. For several minutes, no one moved or spoke as the implications of what they had witnessed settled over them like a suffocating blanket. The galaxy's entire power structure had just been turned upside down in the span of a single. Battle. Ambassador Iothar of the Oceanic Federation was the first to speak, her aquatic form rippling with the emotional colors that indicated extreme distress among her people. "What do we do now? How do we respond to beings who can unmake matter itself?" The answer came not from the council chamber, but from deep space communication rays throughout the galaxy. Human vessels were broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. "In every known language, we seek dialogue, not destruction. Respond within 72 hours to establish formal diplomatic relations." 3 days later, the first ambassadorial vessel arrived at the edge of the Sol system. It was a sleek diplomatic ship from the Arcturian Republic, carrying not weapons or threats, but a formal invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Council as its newest member. The message accompanying the invitation was brief and to the point. "Please don't hurt us." The response came from Earth itself. A blue marble hanging in space that suddenly didn't seem as insignificant as the galaxy had believed. Massive orbital installations that had been invisible to all previous scans shimmered into view round the human homeworld, revealing defensive systems that dwarfed anything else in known space. "We accept your invitation," came the reply from Earth Command. "But understand this, we return not as supplicants, but as the species that once held this galaxy together through strength alone. We hope for peace, but we are prepared for any alternative you might choose." Humanity had returned to the stars, but not as the naive explorers who had left 3,000 years ago. They had become something far more terrifying. Protectors who understood that sometimes peace could only be maintained through the absolute certainty of annihilation for those who would break it. The galaxy would never again forget the lesson of the Perseverance *. Some things were too dangerous to remember clearly, but far too dangerous to forget entirely. As Eldevorthik had warned from the beginning, humans were never really gone. They had simply been waiting for someone to make the fatal mistake of waking them up. The hegemony had made that mistake, and the galaxy would live with the consequences forever. ***, the end ***.